The rain pounded down like 1,000 tiny fists against the windows of the old house at the end of the street. It was an unremarkable place, one many had passed by without a second thought, but for Claire, it was a refuge from the chaos of the outside world. She had recently inherited the home from her estranged grandfather, who was as much a mystery to her as the shadows that loomed outside. On this particular evening, Claire found herself hunched in front of the television, the flickering screen illuminating the dimly lit room. She had settled in for a marathon of classic horror films, seeking solace in the familiar tropes of the genre. But as each film played, her eyes grew heavy, lulled by the rhythm of the stories and the comforting sounds of screams echoing through the night. As the clock struck midnight, Claire felt a strange shift in the air. A chill ran down her spine, and she turned her attention back to the screen, just as the credits for the last film rolled. She reached for the remote to turn it off and prepare for bed, but then she saw it, a flash of something in her peripheral vision. She turned to her right, and her breath caught in her throat. Standing in the corner of the room was a dark silhouette, its features indistinct but somehow familiar. Her heart raced as she realized it resembled a figure from one of her favorite horror films, an infamous killer known for his relentless pursuit of the innocent. But Claire shook her head, trying to convince herself her eyes were playing tricks on her. Perhaps it was merely a shadow cast by the flickering light. Then, more figures began to materialize, stepping out from the silver screen like phantoms escaping the confines of their storylines. There was the deranged clown from another film, cackling madly, and a ghostly woman draped in tattered white, her face twisted in eternal anguish. They all loomed over her, their intentions unclear but their presence menacing. With each passing second, the atmosphere thickened and the air grew electric. The characters didn't just stand there, they began moving towards Claire with eerie conviction, their expressions becoming increasingly antagonistic. The room felt alive, pulsing with malevolence. She was no longer just an audience member but a part of their twisted world. Panicking, Claire scrambled to the screen, her fingers brushing against the surface, desperate to turn it off. But it was too late. The television sparked and hissed, and she felt a hot wave sweep over her as the characters converged to draw nearer. She whirled around to find her path blocked, their laughter echoing in a cacophony of chaos. "What's the matter, Claire?" the clown taunted, his grin stretching impossibly wide. "You wanted to see us, didn't you? Welcome to our world." Quote. She stumbled back, sending a lamp crashing to the floor. The noise seemed to satiate the entities, feeding their insatiable hunger for fear. With nowhere to run, Claire's chest heaved with terror, her mind racing for an escape. Then a thought struck her, the one advantage horror movies always had over reality: the script. "Wait," Claire shouted, her voice trembling but resolute. "You're characters. You can't just do whatever you want. There are rules." The ghostly woman tilted her head, intrigued. "Rules?" she asked, her voice a whisper that sent chills through Claire. "Yes," Claire grasped for any thread of logic. "You can't exist without your story. If you let me go, I promise I'll find a way to keep you alive on screen. You'd have your power, your audience." The characters hesitated, their dead eyes flickering with thought. Was it possible they had more to gain from staying within the confines of the screen? After all, the films were what had made them famous, given them form and purpose. The clown stepped closer again, teeth bared. "Tell us a story, then. Make it one worthy of our attention." Quote. Claire felt a surge of desperation. She was drowning in a sea of malevolence, and in the absence of light, all she could offer was a twisted tale. But she was not just a storyteller, she was the heroine. Taking a deep breath, she conjured a plot with her words, weaving in elements of fear, desperation, survival, everything the creatures craved to hear. As she spun her narrative, something shifted within them. Their relentless hostility ebbed, their bloodlust augmented by her story instead. The house faded away, and the shadows simmered, caught up in the magic of her descriptions. With every word, Claire could feel the characters tethered to the world of stories, their essence tying them back to the screen. She crafted her climax, a battle where the characters turned on each other, devouring one another with the ferocity of their tales. And just like that, with one final scream, they imploded into a burst of static. The room plunged into silence, the television screen flickering and settling into a mundane broadcast as if nothing had occurred. Claire fell to her knees, breathless and trembling. She had survived the night, but at what cost? The screen flickered, displaying the familiar title card of the latest horror classic. As her gaze wandered to the window, a small shiver ran down her spine. The night was still ominous, and somewhere, perhaps, the stories were restless, waiting for the next unsuspecting viewer to invite them into the real world again.